don't see my bar up here with all my stuff on it. So that's kind of weird. So I'm recording. I can't. Oh, here we go. Share screen. That's probably going to do it. Yeah. Okay. So let me share my screen. There we go. Okay. I'm going to grab this. Put it on my other monitor. There we go. So, can everybody see Photoshop?
Yes.
Okay.
Why no?
Good. Okay. So we're going to talk about a couple things tonight. I thought that, I was going to talk totally about brushes, but then I thought, well, that's throwing a lot at you at one time. So I thought I would split it up and talk a little bit about brushes and then talk about sky replacement. We've talked about replacing the sky a little bit in the past, but I'm going to go through a particular technique that I think really works well. And I'm going to talk about a couple of techniques and kind of exactly what we're in for whenever we're trying to replace any kind of extraction, but particularly with skies. So let's go ahead and start talking about brushes. And brushes are important because so many of your tools use brushes, and so many of the things that you do require you to use a brush, right? Even if it's just a soft round brush. But there are many different kinds of brushes, and we talked about this a little bit last time when we created our own watermark brush, so that you could just put your watermark on your image by clicking a brush stroke. So, but I wanted to kind of go through an introduction tonight of the brush panel and the options bar above up here at the top when you click on the brush. So let's start with the options bar first. Over here on the very left is the house, and basically the house is your home, and it's on every one of the tools has that little house. And what that house is, when you click on it, it takes you over here to a different UI. And this UI over here allows you, it's more of a graphic, it's more of a graphical way to get around in Photoshop. And here are your recents. Typically, if you just click on File, Open Recents, you get a list of them, but here you get a graphical representation of things that you've worked on. And some other things you can go through to tutorials and other things, but I really don't ever use this. But I wanted to show it to you. It's got some value. Some people, but for me, I am so used to the old way that I really don't get around in here very much. But it's worth looking at if you want to. And again, it's this little house here that is available for every tool that you have here. But for the brush, after that, we have other options up here that are distinct to the brush. So if you click on this one, this is your tools. Now, tools are kind of a thing of the past, or tools presets, I should say, kind of the thing of the past. In fact, whenever I create a brush tool preset, it comes up and asks me, are you sure you want to do this, or do you want to create a brush? So basically, I think that Photoshop is trying to get you to move to brush and brush attributes to create the same thing. But for me, I would create, and again, for a brush itself, I don't use any preset. For the mixer brush, I do use presets because I want to do different settings. I'm talking about option bar settings for different ways that I'm going to paint with the mixer brush. But for the regular brush itself, these are pretty much going to be kind of on the fly changes that I make. So,
Bob.
Yes.
I don't recall. Have you covered mixer brush before? And if not, put it on the list, please.
Okay. Let me get I should know that you would ask. So mixer brush.
Sorry. So
That's all
I
right.
watched somebody try to explain it one time on in that.
Mixer brush is Mixer brush is a way to, it was designed for painting in Photoshop. And if you talk to, and Susan, you'll probably back me up on this, if you talk to Sandra Pierce, she uses the mixer brush to load her paint, and then she uses the, I call it the pucker tool, what's it called, smudge tool, the smudge tool and the regular paintbrush to move it around and spread it around. So it's different uses for different people, but it was designed for painting in Photoshop. And we'll talk about that at some point. So anyway, the brush presets, I don't really use them, but you could create, what as far as you could put settings up here and then save it into a preset. So you could have, I have overlay as the mode. I could have opacity at 80%, flow at 20%, and smoothing at 10%, and all these buttons pushed, and save that to a particular preset so that next time I want to use that particular brush stroke or those settings, I just go and select my preset and it sets all those for me. But for me, it's the flow and the opacity. Smoothing I really don't use. We'll talk in a minute. But the flow and opacity are just, they're on the fly. I change them on the fly. So I really don't use a preset for any of that. So the next button up here, the next thing up here, let me see if I can learn how to zoom in today. Let's see, there we go. So this thing up here, the next thing, excuse me, is the selection of the brush itself. If you click on that, it opens up. Okay, now I got to figure out how to get rid of it. There we go. It opens up your brushes. And we'll talk about these in just a second, but I want to go across here first. So we have, after you select your brush, then you have the option. This right here is something we'll talk about next time at length, and that opens up your brush settings. And your brush settings are your attributes that make your brush do unique things. And it's real cool stuff, but we'll talk about it next time because it's pretty intense. After that, you have your blend modes, and you have all the same blend modes that you have over here in your layers palette. So basically, if I brush, or if I come in here and fill this with a color, blue we'll say, and then I paint, let's say I paint red, and I use overlay mode, it gives me a really dark look, as you might expect. If I go to screen, it gives me kind of a pink look. So it's actually this red blending with this blue with the paintbrush. So instead of having another layer with color on it and changing your blend mode on your layer, you're doing it with your brush. So normal would just be that red on top of the blue as you see it here. So that's how you can use the blend modes with your brush. I use that all the time. Very, very powerful. And after that, you have things that you're pretty much used to. The opacity, you can change the opacity down to be 20% or whatever. If you press 2, it goes to 20%, or it should. Press 2, it goes to 20%. Press 9, it goes to 90%. If you press 05 real quick, it goes to 5%. So those are shortcuts to get you to the percentage that you want. And you just paint in here, and you can see that's 5%. It's very, very faint. Paint over it, paint over it, paint over it. You finally build it up to like 10 or 15%. So that's kind of how the opacity works. The flow, on the other hand, is whenever I painted these here, I had to let up and paint again and let up and paint again. If I brush here and then brush back and then brush back without letting up, it eventually builds up. Now I've only got it at 18%, 5% opacity, so it's not very much. So let me bring that up here a little bit more and come in here and just paint over. And as I paint over, the more I paint over without letting my brush up, the darker it gets. Okay, and it never goes over 26%, but it goes 18% at a time. So that's the difference between flow and opacity. Now that's kind of one that people confuse all the time. Is there any question about that? To make it, I mean, I want to make sure that you understand the difference. Okay, no problems with that. That's good. Okay, there's a couple of buttons up here I want to talk about. Turn these off, back. I'm going to go back to 100%, which is 0. Okay. Telling you my power keeps going down. I've got a backup on my computer, so every now and then I get that little, my lights flash in here, and that little thing comes up saying I'm on backup battery. So hopefully hopefully they're not going to be at it much longer. So anyway, the buttons that I think are important, this one right here is a button that really is useful if you have a Wacom tablet or a Cintiq, but you can also use it with your mouse, I believe. If I click on that, what it does is the more pressure you put on your pen, the more opacity it paints. So very light to very dark. You can see that. I press down a little bit more and a little bit more, so that it was very light in the beginning and it darkens. So that's what that does. It allows you to start in here and just kind of, you know, be able to paint. The harder you push, the darker it gets, or the more opacity you get.
That works with a mouse?
Well, let me see. Here's my mouse.
I don't think so.
Oh, no, it doesn't work with a mouse.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought that it was only for but I thought I tried it with my mouse earlier and it worked. So I guess maybe I was mistaken. So anyway, that's a really cool thing if you have a tablet. So the next thing is this button over here. This does kind of the same thing, except it's for the size of your brush. So if I click this one, let's excuse me, turn this one off for just a second so we can emphasize this one. So let me make my brush just a little bit bigger here. If I lightly press, it's smaller, and if the more I press, the bigger it gets. So you can imagine that you could go from something really tiny to something really big. So if you were trying to draw hair, for example, you could start off with something tiny and then make it like that so that you have it tapered. So working with that is kind of cool too. So you need to understand that these are here, and especially with, let me try it with my brush. I don't think it works, but let's see. Yeah, it doesn't work with the, I mean my mouse. So that's a coup right there. It's a really good thing if you have a Wacom tablet or a competitor. I'm sure it works with the others as well. So pretty neat thing. So let me back out of that. And let's talk about, now this is an airbrush, and I have never ever used the airbrush. I'm really not sure how this works, but this enables you to use an airbrush. May be really cool, and one of these days I hope that maybe I can work with it, but I don't know how it works, to be quite honest with you, but it enables the airbrush. The smoothing thing here, I don't use the smoothing much either, but the smoothing allows you to change, to smooth any kind of, let's just put it up here at like 60%. It smooths your strokes. So if I come in here and I do something like this, it's really a lot smoother than if I turn it down and I come in here and go like this. So this smoothed it out, and I didn't do that on purpose. It just, I tried to do the same thing, but it's, the idea is that it smooths it, and you have different amounts. Let's see, let's turn it back up. I thought I had it at 60. You have different kinds in here. Like you saw that, it has this, oops, there's my warning again. It has this little pink thing around it, and I think that is this pull string mode. If I turn that off and go to stroke catch-up, and I don't know what that necessarily means, but it goes way ahead of it like that. So I don't really know the advantage of using these, other than if you're having a tough time drawing a straight line, that this kind of smooths it out a little bit. So you might, that's something to look into if you're interested in, or if you have that kind of issue. I've gotten so used to doing things the way that I do them that the smoothing I don't think really is an advantage for me. Now I know at one of our camera meetings, David Lanford was showing how he was doing some kind of retouching. I don't really remember, but he had the smoothing turned on and he really liked it. So to each his own, if that helps you, I wanted to be sure and point it out. If you want to take a look at it and see if it can help you in any way when you're doing painting. So that's the smoothing. And then we have this little angle here. And I'll talk about that in a minute because it really doesn't apply when you have a round brush. If I had a brush that was at that was a stick or something, then you could do this and change the angle of that stick so it's turned around in different degrees. So I'll show you that in just a minute. But right now we'll just leave it at 0. And this thing here, we went over this one time. I actually went over all of these one time when we were talking about our tools, and I talked about the brush. And this was one of those things that people kind of go, "Oh, that's kind of interesting," but I would never use it. So here's a thing. Let's try this spiral. It creates this spiral thing. You click OK, and then you just kind of paint, and it creates a spiral. I'm just kind of going in circles, and it's creating this spiral. This I don't really like. Let's try this dual axis here. That's kind of cool. You come over here and you just start painting in this left quadrant, and it copies everything in the other quadrant. So you can come in here and create some designs that are really kind of interesting, and it would create a four corner design like that. So that's all that is. Again, I don't ever use that stuff. So kind of cool. If you're into that, you want to create some designs, you could probably have a brush that maybe has dual colors on the brush and do some swirls in there and maybe create something really cool. But that is basically the options bar for the brush. Kind of straightforward, but the main thing would be these two things right here. If you have a tablet, those can be extremely powerful when you're doing some things, especially when we get into creating your own brushes and doing some special stuff. So I want to be sure and point those out. Any questions on the option bar?
Bob, how do you make the paintbrush go dry?
What do you mean?
I see a lot of the folks that do the landscape painting, they do a stroke and it thins out, the opposite of the default settings that we have there.
Opposite.
So normally, like so I use flow at like 10%, 5%, or 20, whatever, and then opacity 100%, and then it accumulates. If I want more paint, I just keep the stylus down and paint over it again, and it'll darken or whatever I'm doing. But I noticed like that Disney guy and some of the other guys that are painting, the stroke actually thins out like the brush is going dry.
Oh, okay.
Well, that's okay. It might be a painterly thing, not a photo thing. And the other thing you mentioned, the airbrush, I actually use that just because it happened to be turned on the first time I tried it. All it does is it keeps blowing ink, so the paint will actually get bigger than your brush. If you turn that mode on and you start painting with it, it'll just keep spraying paint like an airbrush would. So it'll actually spread out further than the size of your brush if you want that effect, if you hold it down long enough. So it's just like having hydraulic pressure behind the ink, and so it'll just keep going on. It's very nice for working in shadows, but otherwise, I assume it's a painterly thing.
Okay.
Because the rest of it,
It's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, maybe I'll make it a point to talk about the airbrush next time. Make a note here. I
I
learned
guess,
something.
yeah, I don't know that it has, I just use it now because it happened to be on. I don't know that it's for photography it's that much, but if you're wanting to, the painterly stuff, or in shadows, it's actually pretty neat because it just, you're not wearing your hand out trying to get, trying to go over
Right.
5% in that
Okay.
part of the picture. You can just hold it down. It'll go black for you if that's what you want
Oh,
it to do,
okay. So,
right?
oh, I
It's just,
see.
it's just a
Yeah,
lot
just
less movement. Yeah.
so I just hold it down to keep it clicked, and it just
Yeah,
gets
and
more and more.
it'll fill up. So if you're
Oh,
like working in the shadows and you say, screw it, I can't get any detail anywhere. I'll just
right.
go, I'll just go black. I'll just let it go black. It's just a way of, instead of going over 15 times, just hold it there for 2 seconds and it'll.
Okay. Well, it suddenly got dark in here, so my wife turned the light off. We're
I
hoping
know.
that would keep the electricity from cutting out. Okay. Well, let's talk about the brush panel itself then. If you if you click on the brush and open it up, here are your brushes that you have loaded. You may notice that up here in the upper left, you have the size and you have the hardness. And whatever brush you have selected, like I have this soft round brush selected, it's got it circled in this box. I can change the size here to make it be smaller. I can change the hardness to make it be harder or softer. Even though it's a soft round, I can push it and make it totally hard 100%. So a lot of times I'll just pick one of these and I'll use it for everything. So no matter how hard or whatever it is. The problems that you may run into is that there are several soft rounds. And here's a soft round, here's a soft round. They have different settings in there as well as just a standard soft round brush. So you want to make sure that when you make a selection in here that it fits what you need. Now we'll talk about the attributes next time, but in this case, this one has additional attributes that this one doesn't have. And this one has attributes that this one doesn't have. So they are distinguished by those different attributes. And that's why it says pressure opacity, pressure size. It has these things turned on up here. So if you're looking for nothing, no special attributes, nothing, then this is a good brush for you. But I wanted to point out the different sections here. These right here are your most recent brushes. So whatever brushes that you have chosen, it keeps track of your last ones. You can see that my last three have all been the same brush. It's been the soft round brush, but it keeps track of everything. So that's pretty important. This is the angle thing I was talking about. If right now I have a circular brush, let's make it a little bigger. It's a little bigger here. If I wanted to, I could take one of these and flatten it out like this. So now I have a flat brush. And with it being flat, I can grab this and turn it to be whatever angle I want. If you look up here, this is the angle that you have it. So every time I turn it, it changes up here. So if I wanted to, oops, not up there, over here. If I wanted to, I could just come up here and say 45. And now it would be at 45. Or I could change that to, it's hard to see my keyboard in the dark, change it to 90 like that. So you could do that instead of coming over here and opening it up and making this change. So if you know the exact angle that you're looking for, you can just type it in right there. And that's what that angle does for you. Now, do I use this? No, I don't. But you could. You could create a brush that's flat, especially for getting into some tight places. Maybe you're wanting to add just a little bit of color into a very tight place, or you want to make, a little bit of a mask into a very tight place, maybe in between fingers or something like that. You can use a flat brush like this and squeeze it in there and do that much easier than with the round brush. For me, I've gotten used to just going in there and taking it out and then painting back in the fingers as they were. It just is quicker and easier. I've been doing it for years. But it's there. You can create an actual brush for it and whatever. So that is what this angle refers to. Excuse me. Now for size and hardness, I never use these sliders. If you come out here, it's again in the dark. If you come over here, you can change the size with the bracket keys. Those are the keys next to the P key on the computer keyboard. And you just press the left one to make it smaller, the right one makes it bigger. But what I like to do is press the Option Control or the Alt Control, and you can go left and right to change the size. You can go up and down to change the hardness. So I resisted that for the longest time, and I finally got tired of coming over here every time to change the hardness and got used to it now, just pressing those two keys and pushing up and down to change the hardness, and then left and right to change the size. I still tend to use the bracket keys to change the size, but I'm warming up to the idea of left and right here to change the size. You can be much more precise too, because when you're doing it with the bracket keys, it jumps it, where here you do it 1 pixel at a time. You can get the exact pixels that you want it to get much more precise in the size. So I like to use those as my shortcut keys for the brush.
Bob,
Yes.
you're using the bracket keys?
No, I use the bracket keys sometimes, but for this, I'm using my I'm using my Wacom tablet, but it also works with the mouse, I'm pretty sure. Yeah. So if you press the Alt and Control.
Oh, okay, yeah. Yeah, got it.
Okay, up and down, left and right. That's the shortcut. Okay.
Yeah, I thought you were doing something different. Sorry.
That's all right. So any other questions on that? Okay. Let's go back over here then and go back into here. And what we have down here at the bottom are the different brushes that I've brought in. Now you have, yours are going to be different than mine because I have imported some and gotten rid of some and so on, and you can do the same. If you have what came with Photoshop, then you probably have general brushes and maybe some other things. I'm not really sure what actually comes with Photoshop. But in general brushes, that's where your soft round, that's what we were looking at just a minute ago in your general brushes. Then you have a legacy group here. Now I don't know why I've got legacy and then I have legacy inside of legacy. So, and they're different. So you have this legacy brushes here, but you have, oh, there's some light again. Thank you.
Nothing seems to work.
I think our guys have gone, thank goodness.
No, they're not.
Oh.
They're still sawing.
Okay. So they're not gone. So anyway, here's our default brushes inside our legacy brushes. And there is a ton of stuff in here. Again, soft round, hard round, soft round, pressure size. You got the same kind of thing that you have in your general brushes and a lot more. So you've got, it's flat point, medium, stiff. You've got all these different kind of brushes and they're specialized and they have all those attributes that we're going to talk about next time associated with them that helps make them what they are. But if I were you, I would come in here and just see what's here and just play with some of these brushes, because what's the difference between a lino crayon and a regular crayon, or a watercolor brush and an airbrush hard low, density, grainy? I mean, what do these things mean? I use this spatter brush, this right here. This is what Richard Sturdivant had us use when I was in his class. So I use this one all the time. But there are other brushes in here. Excuse me. And you really should come in here and grab one of these things and just kind of see what it does. Look at this dune grass. If I grab that and come in here, it's going to paint some grass that you could put, in a little bit, if you have a landscape where you're got a dry area, just throw some grass in there. So pretty cool brush, and you don't even have to create that, it just creates itself. And then leaves, same thing. You got a bunch of leaves here. Of course, red on blue leaves is kind of weird. So anyway, I would come in here and look around at some of this stuff and see what's here and just kind of draw some things like I'm doing right here. You also have this thing called basic brushes, where you have mechanical points. So probably like pencils. That's what it makes me think of, is a mechanical pencil. Just come here and draw. And see, I'm drawing with red on blue. I'm not sure what makes that unique from just a regular black brush that you've made very small. So I'm not really sure what the difference would be.
Bob, I want to ask a question.
Sure, a little louder, please.
Just for clarification, those brushes you're saying to explore, those don't come with Photoshop, do they?
They don't?
I mean, I'm looking at my screen and all I have is general brushes.
Okay, then let's go on to the next thing.
I could be wrong. I'm just trying to see.
No. You're probably right. Let me go to the next thing then. Or first of all, thank you for pointing that out. All right. I think it's time for these guys to go home. Come on. It's almost 8 o'clock. You have, again, you have these groups, and here are some individual. These are ones that I've created myself. And this is just playing. This is not anything really. But you have this little slider down at the bottom, and I wanted to show you that. If you go to the right, it makes everything a little bit bigger. If you're, vision and challenged, kind of like I am sometimes. Or if you're not, and you want to make everything smaller, you can come over this way and you can get some more room. I kind of like it somewhere in the middle here, but I wanted to point that out. And then up here in the upper right corner, as you know, anytime there's a gear, anytime there's a gear, that means that there's some settings. So if you click on that, here are some settings. And this is a new brush preset, just like it says. Well, that's the exact same thing as saving a brush like we did the other day. It's the same thing as if I come up here to edit and define brush preset. We don't have anything to be defined, but it's the same thing. So, and this little plus is exactly the same thing, create a new brush. So that's just kind of a shortcut instead of going up here for new brush presets, the exact same thing. New brush group, I could create a new brush group. And here we'll call this Bob's Brushes. Now I have Bob's Brushes over here, and I can come over here and select all these brushes, move them into Bob's Brushes, and now I have Bob's Brushes in a group. So it's that easy. Excuse me. If I don't want them in a group, all I got to do is come in here and select them all again and just pull them out of the group. Let's see if I can do that down here. Yeah, so now they're not in the group anymore and I have an empty group. If I want to delete that, I can also right click and delete the group. And now the group, once I say okay, now the group's gone. So it's that simple to create your own little group. So if I want to rename a brush or delete a brush, you have those available, but I don't have any brushes selected, so they're grayed out. So if I selected this brush, those would be available for me to do. But you could also just right click and say rename or delete brush. So it's the same thing. Okay. So these right here have to do with what you see. Okay. So brush name, I have brush name turned on. If I turn that off, brush name goes away and all you have is the picture of the brush. I kind of like to have the name on there. The brush stroke, if I turn that on, you actually see the stroke that it makes. Sometimes that's real helpful, but I think it takes up way too much room. So I usually have mine turned off. That's just a personal preference. Besides that, you can see them over here. Oops. You can see them over here whenever you select your brush and you go to work on your attributes, you get to see the brush stroke over here. It's not that big a deal for me to see the brush stroke whenever I'm selecting a brush. But if I wanted to, if I'm not sure what that brush may look like, then I can come over here and say, well, what does that look like? And I can click on here and I can see what that looks like whenever you make a stroke with it. So it's just personal thing. Now the brush tip, that's these tips right here, the little ends of the brush. So if I turn that off, then all you see is the name. So for me, I like to have the brush tips turned on. So it's just personal preference, whatever works for you. Okay. Now,
Bob,
yes.
I found the legacy brushes, so I apologize.
Oh,
So
okay.
I went to the end of those settings where it says legacy brushes, and then I got a pop-up that said, do you want to restore these? I never knew I had unstored them. So
that's where I was going.
okay. So
but that's okay. Thank you. No. Thank you. Yeah, that was why I was saying, hold on just a minute, Rush. I'm going to get to that. Well, that's what this is over here. if you want to load your legacy brushes, you don't have them over here, you can click here and it will ask you, do you want to restore your legacy brushes? And you say, okay, and it brings in your legacy brushes. So I don't know why I guess maybe a lot of people were saying we don't ever use those, or people were wind up deleting those. So it gives you the opportunity there to bring back all those legacy brushes, which is pretty nice, because a lot of as I was showing you, there's a lot of neat brushes in there. Append default brushes, same kind of thing. If you wanted to append your default brushes, if you got rid of all these default brushes and then you wanted to bring them in, but you didn't want to replace the other brushes here, then you just append the default brushes and it adds them in rather than replacing your other brushes. Okay. Import brushes. I'm sure that you've imported brushes, but we'll go through that. I wanted to show you that back around CS5 or CS6, back before CC for sure, I took a class from a guy, and it wasn't like an online thing. He sold his stuff and I bought one of his classes, and it was for retouching. And one of his recommendations in the class was that you put all of your stuff that deals with Photoshop, like brushes or actions or anything like that, in their own folder. And because the reason for that is because when you bring in a new version from CS5 to CS6, it goes in there and it could wipe out your old stuff and put in all their new brushes and everything in there. And I don't know if that happens anymore, but it made sense to me. So I created a folder on one of my drives that's called Photoshop plugins and stuff. And in that, I have my brushes, my actions, and I have a lot more than that actually, but that's where I store everything. So if I want to bring in my brushes, I can just come over here and grab one of these brushes. Let's pick something fun. How about this water? So I'm going to load this water brush, and I just select OK, and now I have a water brush in here. It's that quick. And then I can come in here and grab this water and create a really big piece of water. It doesn't work real well with that. Let's do it with white. And then you have some water. So it's kind of cool. So anyway, that's how you bring in brushes. I wanted to show you something I thought was kind of cool. Let me just delete that whole thing. Go back to my ground. That same guy, his name was David, and I don't know how to say his last name, but Curadin or something like that. He was a retoucher, and he created all these brushes. And I want you to look at this. These brushes are for catch lights. These catch lights are for window panes. So if you shoot someone in natural light, you could add a window pane catch light to make people think that they were standing by a window. And you have this window here that's got, see what is that, 6 panes, and it's got a little pane at the top that's got a little awning-like thing. And then you've got this one is 6, this is 6, there's an 8-pane window. So it's, he went to a lot of trouble to create all these things. And then here is, these are for darkening your iris ring. You can click on one of these. If I click on this and then come over here, you've got this, it's white now, but if you click on it, it creates that iris ring. So if I turned it to black, it would create that little iris ring around your iris to just darken it a little bit. So I think it's really cool. And I used that for a long time. I really don't use these anymore, but that's an easy way to go in. And then if you can erase the part like the bottom at the top where the eye goes into the eyelids. So it's kind of cool. And then he has all this other stuff. You have this little half moon here that you can put opposite your catch light. And then you down here, you've got some more catch lights. These are like for round catch lights for like umbrellas or octoboxes. Whoops. And then you have some more down here. You have some more. Here's a 4-pane catch lights. Anyway, I just thought it's kind of funny that this guy was a professional retoucher, and he has all these things to help him out. So it's kind of neat. And then there's another one down here that has some more catch lights, but he also has an eyelash brush here where you can create the little eyelashes on the bottom of the eye. So kind of neat. And then, Susan, you'll recognize this, eyelashes from Sandra Pierce. So, I mean, a lot of people use brushes for a lot of different things. So I just think it's pretty cool that people go to all that trouble to create these kind of things that can save them a lot of time or can make their Photoshop a lot better, their retouching or whatever. So pretty cool. And one more thing I wanted to show you here, it's getting really loud here, is the Get More Brushes. Get More Brushes takes you to the Adobe, I hope everybody can still see this, to the Adobe website where their brushes are. And they have brushes that are free. You can come in here and find all these different kind of brushes that you can download for absolutely free. So, and I've downloaded some of these, and these are Kyle's brushes. And what's Kyle's last name? Kyle Webster creates these brushes and puts them up here for free. Excuse me. So pretty cool. What else did I want to say about brushes? I think that may be it. Yeah. Oh, one more thing is over here, there is a panel. If you go to Window, you have brushes and brush settings. So you have a panel for each one of these. And the brushes panel is almost identical to this, but it's a little bit different. I don't know why they made it different. But if you open this up, and you can open this up, you can see the difference. This one over here does not have the circle thing where you can change the angle of your brush. And it doesn't have the hardness. It has the size in here, but it doesn't have the hardness. So I'm not sure why they didn't include it over here. Not that I would have used it, but I'm not sure why they didn't include it. But you have the same thing with the last used brushes, and you have your general brushes, and you have all of these things. You have the slider, a little bit different as well. Let me open this up again. Is the difference here. You have a button down here to add a new brush instead of up here. And then you have a folder down here to create a new group, which you don't even have over here at all. And then over here, in here, the only difference is that it included, for some reason, it included Sandra Pierce's brushes. I thought it was the last brushes I added, but the last brush I just added was a water brush. So I'm not sure why it added Sandra Pierce brushes, and I have no others in here. So that's something that maybe I should look into and try to explain to you. But other than that, everything else over here is exactly like it is over here. So for me, a lot of times I'll just open this panel over here to get what I want, because I don't use the size, the hardness, and the angle anyway. So if I'm looking for a brush, I can come over here just as easily and more quickly. But that requires you to have that panel open. So you would need to go to Window and go to Brushes and Brush Settings, because both of them are here, and add those over here to be able to have them, if you access them very often. You don't have to, they're not required or anything, but if you access them very often, then you can have them over here so that you can get to them at a moment's notice. Okay.
Bob?
Yes.
To Ron, I have a couple or three of those Kyle's brushes that I've downloaded, and one section is dry media brushes. That may be what you're interested in.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, go check those out, because there's some cool stuff. Anything else before we move over into sky replacements? Next time,
Yeah,
we will.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
And maybe I should Google instead of ask. Robin mentioned dry media. Now I'm seeing wet media.
Uh-huh.
Should that
Yes,
mean
I have
anything to me? What does that mean?
I
What is
think
dry?
I think that's the same thing as dry brush and wet brush.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, these are the brushes right here, the dry media
Okay.
brushes.
Okay.
So you have
Okay.
chunky charcoal and you have pastel palooza, pencil, happy HB.
Okay, cool.
So it's like pencil brushes. So you have the dry brushes, and then you have the wet brushes, which are like paint.
If you're painting like with watercolors, like I do sometimes, a dry brush is you have color, you have paint on your brush, but the brush is really dry. So as you scrape it across the paper or canvas,
It thins out.
will, yeah, right.
Okay, cool. Appreciate it.
Well, I hope it works.
I'm sure I've seen it work. I just don't know how to do it. So that'll help me.
All right, anything else? All right. What I want to do now is talk about sky replacements. And to start with, let me get rid of some of this stuff. Start with, I kind of want to explain what the issue is for the most part. I mean, first of all, you need to make a selection of some kind. You can do that with the luminosity mask. You can do it with color range. You can do it with even, with a quick selection tool or whatever. And in your selection, we talked about selections at one point. We did. I went through several different ways to make selections. But you basically do have to make a selection. You have to, in order to get rid of your sky, to replace it with something else, right? I mean, that just seems to make sense. And the problem is that usually, at least for me, when I'm replacing a sky, it's because it's drab, it's gray, or it's white. There's no clouds, there's nothing in there that makes it interesting. So I want to put something in there other than the light gray, or basically a white sky. So what you're typically doing is bringing in something darker. So you're either bringing in a blue sky, you're bringing in a sunset sky or sunrise sky or something like that that has some interest in it. And what that does is it causes these halos around tree limbs and other things, other objects that you've cut out the edges on. And so to kind of explain that, I drew this little thing here. And if you could pretend for a minute, and I'm not an artist, obviously, as far as drawing is concerned, but if you could imagine that this is a tree limb and this was a very white background. In fact, I should fill that with white to make it more appropriate. Here we go. So this is a white background. It's harder to see it here, but it's a light gray around the edges. That's your haloing. And the reason you have that haloing is because of this white background. Your tree limbs and your leaves are going to take on that color. If you have a blue sky, they're going to take on a little bit of the blue. So if you have typically you have a very blown out sky that you're going to replace, you're going to have your limbs and your leaves and your buildings and your whatever else there is, that's going to have these little halos, and it's the colors that it's taking on those edges. That's natural. If you go in and erase those, then you're actually removing part of your tree, right? Or your limbs or your leaves. So the dilemma is when I do that, and I see this all the time in my images anyway, when I go in and try to do sky replacements, I see orphan leaves. I call them orphan leaves because there's no limbs associated with them. They're just floating because I've erased the part of the halo, and it's gotten rid of that entire limb, and now you've got a leaf out there with no limb. So that's a dead giveaway that you've got a sky replacement. So the thing that you should be thinking about is not necessarily to remove that, but to change the color or have a background that is similar in luminosity. So you may have a drab sky that you replace with a bright sky, but it has clouds in it or some interest in it. And it makes sense because if you have a bright sky, you probably have a bright landscape. So if you bring a landscape in that's bright and you put a dark sky behind it, it's not going to look right. So the things to think about other than just removing those edges is a better way is probably to try to darken those edges a little bit with color from the sky, and then maybe having a brighter sky than you really would like. So I hope that makes sense. And some of the techniques we're going to look at here in just a second, that's what we're trying to do, is to get rid of that. We're going to darken it to equal or brighten it to equal that halo. And then we can come back and change. Once we get rid of the halo, we can come back and treat the entire image as a single image. At least that's the approach. Okay, does that make sense, everybody? Okay, I assume that was a yes. We're going to start off with this. All right, Ron, Robin, Susan, you guys recognize this. This is at Alley Mill in Missouri from our trip last year. And I went in and have already done this. I've already replaced the sky. And if you look, and we're going to zoom in here, you're going to see that there's no halos. There are a few orphan leaves here, but these are created basically by my my mask, and they're not created by the technique to remove the halos. So that's a failure of me on the mask. And what I could do, or what I would do if I came in here and I thought this worked, I would probably just come here and erase all these orphan leaves and accept it the way it is. Now this is 169% zoomed in. So if you go back to somewhere around 100%, you get a better feel for what it really looks like. So in this case, it really kind of looks okay. Now you got some orphan leaves down here too to deal with, but the mask was done by using channels and creating luminosity masks. I'm not going to go through that unless you really want me to, because that takes a little bit of time to go through creating that mask. But basically I just went in and took the darkest or the channel with the most contrast. And if there wasn't one, then I used Greg's action to create the different channels so that I could get the one with the most contrast. And then I went in and enhanced it a little bit to come up with the mask. So that's kind of how I did that. Now, the way the technique works, let me just throw these away so that you can kind of see what we're going to do. Okay, so this is the original with the mask, where I've taken out the trees. And you can see in here, if we come in here, that you can just barely see a little bit of a limb right there, and you can't see any limb to hold those leaves. So there are some things in here that I may want to go back. I did this kind of quick to get ready for tonight. I may want to go back and readdress the mask to try to get these to look a little better. But there are some halos in there because of the sky. Now, if I take this out, you can see the sky is pure white. And I love this location, but we never had a time where we had good skies. At least that was my take on it. So for most of these images, when I came in here, I threw out the sky and tried to do something different, tried to do something exciting. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But I wanted to use this because it's a great example of how you can come in here and do a sky replacement. So I took that mask from luminosity mask and created this. So the first thing is to get a sky. Now I grabbed this sky, but I'm going to come in here and I have a library of skies, and you guys probably have seen me come into my library before. And I don't remember where this sky was, but we're gonna pick this one just for grins. And I bring a sky in that I'm going to use, and I put it down below, and you can see that we have the sky is showing through the mask. So I'm going to take this and we're going to make it big enough so that it covers the entire image. Now it's important, we have a reflection down here, so it's important that we have a reflection of the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this and push it up like this. And what that does is it actually flattens this top part up here anyway, which is kind of what I wanted to do. The horizon is actually right here, so I'm going to push this up to just below there. Okay. Now I'm going to hit enter, and I'm going to take that and copy it. You probably know what's coming, and then I'm going to take that. Whoops. I'm going to take that, and I'm going to flip it vertical and bring it down here at the bottom. Okay. And I want it to be kind of the same way, but what I'm going to do is actually meet it here. You're not going to be able to tell much difference in this reflection, so it's not going to matter whether I have it exactly in the right place or not. So I really want this to cover the entire image. Okay. So now I have a sky here, and I have two parts, and I'm going to take these two and I'm going to merge them to create a single image. So this is a single sky image with sky at the top and some sky reflection down in the water. Now what I'm going to do is take this image right here and change it to multiply. It's already changed to multiply. This is the normal look, but then I'm going to take it and change it to multiply. And what that does is it comes in and it darkens. Sorry, that's our ring doorbell telling us somebody's at the front door, which it's my wife checking things out. Anyway, the multiply will darken the rest of the image here so that those halos get darkened to match as close as it can to the sky. So now if I go in here and look, whoops, I keep using Q instead of Z for the shortcut for zoom. If you go in here and look, there are no halos. So multiply is really good about getting rid of these halos. Now we don't have a big difference in the sky color. So I didn't look for a sky that was very dark. I wanted something that would work. That's why I picked that. I didn't pick one of these heavy red, orange with the sun in it type skies to put in here. And if we do that, and we'll see that in just a minute, we'll do that with some of these images, it's going to be very difficult to work with them to remove the halos. But this is basically what you do. And it removes those halos. Now, if it didn't remove those halos, if there were still some, then you would just duplicate this to a second image that would make it even darker. And you just keep doing that until your halos are gone. And then you consolidate everything with a merge stamp layer, and then you use your tools to brighten your picture back up again. At that point, everything is basically in harmony with the right color. Your halos are gone. You bring it back, and you've got a nice picture. So that's one method, and I learned this one. We're going to do it about 3 times here on how to fix those halos. And the reason that this works better, in my opinion, is because it doesn't go in and take those halos away, doesn't, go in and add, expand the mask so that it's pushing into your edge here like this. It actually uses multiply to darken that so that it balances better with the image. So if this is too dark, then you come in here and you do a levels or a curves, and you come in here and brighten it up to get your image back to where you want it. And you can come in here and do some dodge and burning or some localized adjustments to different areas. But you have your reflection down here. You can see, because this is kind of a bright sky still, but you have a little bit of a reflection down here from the sky. So it works out pretty good. The only thing that's a problem is over here, and this is looks like some chromatic aberration or something with purple edges, and I would just go into, probably go into Camera Raw and use the tool over there to get rid of those purple edges. So any question on that? It's pretty quick, and we're going to do it, like I said, 2 or 3 times, so it becomes a little easier to see. There's actually one more step that we would probably do. In fact, I did kind of omit a step, so let me throw this away. There is another step in here that I didn't do. What happens is whenever you do this multiply, and you can't see it here because it's kind of everything worked out pretty well, you can't really see, but the multiply actually goes over all of the area down here where the tree is and all that. So you have a little bit of the sky that's bleeding through that multiply blend mode. So what you need to do to erase that is make another copy of this, the sky, and you want to make a smart object out of it. Eventually it'll create a smart object. And what we're going to do with this is we're going to use it to remove the sky influence on the rest of this image. So what you do is you copy this mask down here like this so that it's not affecting the sky. It's only affecting the lower area. And then what you do is you do a filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you blur it real strong. Now, if you look at it, I turn the preview off, look at, you can see part of the sky in here and part of the sky over here. If I turn the preview on, you can see it go away. So that's what this is designed to do. Sorry, I forgot that step. And it's very important because it's the way that you remove the sky influence from the blend mode onto the rest of your image. Then if you wanted to, you could come in here and do levels to lighten it or do your local adjustments, whatever. So now, any questions?
So that layer, that 5 copy 2, that's so that you don't have to mask the sky and the water below?
That's so you don't have to mask it, the sky off of the rest of the image here.
Okay.
Because if you don't have that, you can see that there is an influence. You can't see it so much here. That's why I totally missed it.
Just coincidentally, yeah.
Yeah, but if you click it on, you can see it change.
Mm-hmm.
And if you zoomed in, looked at it pretty close, you could see the influence of this. You might see, and the sky is not that dramatic either, so it's much harder to see.
Yeah, if you had white clouds, it'd be different. Yeah.
Right. So you would see those influences in here, and you would try to get rid of it. And that's the way you get rid of that. So let's do another one. This one is a lot harder, and it took me a few times on this one. This is another picture from another angle. And again, let's see, I'm just gonna get rid of everything because I don't know. Let's get rid of this. And I'll show you what I tried to do and it didn't work. So here's a dark sky right here. Now you're going from let me turn this, change this from multiply to normal. You're going from this. So it's another blown out sky. And you have some fog in here, which is going to be a challenge as well. So you have this blown out sky, you got a little bit of blue here, just a very tiny amount that you can barely see. So I go, okay, I'm going to do this dark sky. So I click here. Let me turn this mask on. And I have this dark sky. Excuse me. So if I zoom in here, wow, do we ever have halos? And then we have this over here that looks really rough. So it's just, it's just a mess. So the thinking is, okay, well, let's do what we did on the others. So I created this blur. Let me go ahead and put this back on multiply. Oops, where's multiply? There it is. And it really, really darkened the entire image. Now, if you think about it, what it's doing, I've got my little beach ball here. What it's doing is it's trying to darken the image to balance it with the sky. And in order for that to work, you're going to have a really dark image because this is a really dark sky. So if I come up here and look, there are no halos. It got rid of all of my halos just like it's supposed to. Over here, the fog, even that looks good. It looks kind of iffy right there, though. I don't know that I would like that. But it did a pretty good job of getting rid of everything. Now, that's because there's fog there, and that was, like I said, the challenge to begin with. But now you've got this really dark image. So what do? if you come in here and start adding adjustments, let's say, let's start with levels, and we start lightening this up, you begin to get a real muddy look. I didn't really like it at all, especially this right here. Look at how awful red that is. Now I could probably pull this down a little bit, whoops, and maybe get something to work in the trees here, but it's just, and then the sky, I lose all of the dramatic of the sky when I'm brightening it up like that. So it just doesn't work for me. And that's one of those instances where you're trying to do something that's not natural, because the sky was really light. The image was a morning image. I think it was a morning image. And it just wasn't made to have a sky like that. So I thought, well, let me try a different approach. So I came in here, let's turn this one off. I came in here and decided, and I'm going to turn this one off too, because I don't need that levels. And I'll change this back to normal just to start from the beginning. So I came in here with a different sky, and I took this sky right here, and this is it's still a darker sky, but it's brighter than the other one, and it's probably doable. So it may not be the dramatic sky you wanted, but it's closer to what the first sky was. And if you're going to create your image to be something that makes sense, you need to do something where you're closer to the original sky. Okay, so I took that, and what I needed to do now was reverse it off of here. Let's see, let me make that multiply first. It's really dark, and you can see the sky coming in. It's really obvious here where the sky is bleeding through the image. So I need to take this, copy it, and I'm going to make it a smart object because I may want to change the amount that I blur it. So create a smart object, and eventually I'll get a smart object. There we go. Now I'm going to drag this down. If you do Alt or Option and drag this, it copies it. So that's all you have to do to copy. You could clip it to there, but it's easier just to copy it. So now I have this, and I'm going to blur it. So I go to Gaussian blur, Gaussian blur, and the idea, I'm going to look over here. I'm going to bring it down, and I'm going to look in this area to see about when that goes away. So it's usually, 200 or 300 before you really get rid of everything. That's 500. Sometimes I take it all the way up to 1,000. So it doesn't really matter as long as it smooths it out along here. So I'm going to go with 741 and click OK. And now I'm going to come up here and look at and see if I've got, see there's no halos. They're all gone. Even the fog looks good. So, I mean, it looks really believable here that you have this natural sky. So we're going to zoom back out. And now I've got this dark image. So I probably want to come in here and add levels or curves or something to adjust this, to brighten it up a little bit. Bring it in like this. Maybe darken the darks a little bit. Oops, too much. The midtones. So now you've got an image that's actually doable. A lot of local adjustments would have to happen here. It's very dark down here. And you may want to come in here and do some dodging and burning on all this stuff. But this is a doable sky replacement manually. So,
Hey, Bob.
Yeah.
Hey, why would you not just mask in the exposure from the original image? Are they too disconnected? Is that upper thirds?
Well, so you're saying instead of going with multiply?
No, I saw the multiply. That's cool because you're dealing with the branches and the
Right.
and the mask. But now that you want to fix the exposure, why not go back to your original image and mask
Well, I think
the
that
clouds below, or is it just too hard to?
I think what
Patch
you
the
would
color.
wind up with, you could do that. And I actually, had that thought myself. Oh, this is what
Okay.
he's going to do. This is what they're going to do. But
Mhm.
you run into this issue. If you use the exact mask, you're going to bring back all the halos because that's part of the mask.
Yeah, yeah.
If you don't use the mask, or if you use the mask, then you can do select, contract. Where is it? I don't have a selection made, but you could do a
But I get
selection.
it, yeah.
Right here. And then you could do select, contract, modify, contract, and you could contract it by a pixel, and then you could put it in there, and it may work. I don't know. That's what I thought
Okay.
was actually going to happen whenever I was learning this. But basically, if you do that, though, you're removing the balance that you've created of the image with the sky.
Yeah,
Because now
that's
you're
what I
gonna
was
have
wondering. Yeah.
now you're going to have a brighter image and a darker sky. So,
Bob,
yes.
If I were in this exact situation, I think I'm curious. I think I would take the layer mask on that very top layer, levels 1, and just paint
Yep.
black all over everything that's not sky.
Okay.
I think.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay. So now what you're doing there, so I turn that, so I'm dark. So
Well,
all you're
okay,
doing,
never mind that. There's something else going on then. Never mind.
yeah, it's what we've done with this multiply, like I said, is balance the
Yeah.
sky with the image. And
Yeah,
if you start changing that, then you're changing that balance.
Yeah, I might.
So,
No, I'm thoroughly confused. So never mind.
oh, wait a minute now. If you're thoroughly confused, now let's talk about it.
Well, I don't know what I would do. I would want to brighten up everything that's not sky, and I'm not sure how. Maybe go to the second from the top layer mask and paint everything in black. I don't know.
Well, again, if I change the balance between this and the sky, then I'm
Yeah,
counteracting what I just did.
yeah,
Um, you know, it seems like that's what you would want to do, and that was kind of my thinking too. Is that this is really dark down here, and if I brighten it up, then I'm
yeah.
brightening the sky as well. Uh,
Well, no,
that's
you don't want to brighten the sky.
right. I think you may want to do some local adjustments. Maybe down in here where it's really dark, you would want to lighten that up to kind of balance it with everything, because it's in deep shadow.
You
And
mean add
probably,
like a brightness layer or something?
yeah,
Bob?
maybe, yeah,
This is Susan. When I took Chris Duncan's class at iHeart, that's where I learned where like right above, actually right above I can't read the layer names. My laptop's too tiny. But right above the layer that's got the mill in it. If you
okay,
put a blank layer above it,
uh-huh,
like just add a new blank layer and
yeah,
then change that to soft light.
yeah,
This is what he did with all of his landscapes that he showed us that were amazing. So
okay,
then you take your brush and you put your
okay,
brush down to about 30% and
okay,
select your white. And then you can paint in like you were dodging, but watch what it does. You're not painting your actual pixels, but you're gonna make it really bright. So like if you wanted to bring out your waterfall, you just paint
yep,
light with your brush right into where like your waterfall is or where you want to light it. But he keeps his brush about 15 to 20. But watch what happens to anything in your landscape when you put like a little bit of dodge or burn. Like you can put a little bit of dark on the darkers and it gives you a contrast that's phenomenal in landscapes. That's a Chris Duncan technique.
okay.
But that might give you what you were looking for, Robin, to lighten it up where you want it to be light.
Yeah. I
So
was kind of wanting everything that's not sky and fog to get back to the original image. But
Oh, wow. Oh,
whoops.
look at this.
Oh,
Yeah.
fairyland.
I was wondering why it wasn't painting. I must have picked the water bubble thing instead of my regular.
That was me. I was behind you blowing bubbles.
Wow. Okay. Let's try that again.
That's cool.
Ah, there we go. Now we got a little bit of brightness coming in. Yeah,
But
that's
it's
pretty cool.
it's a really neat little trick, and your trees will just pop. But that's how he pops his. That's how he wins his stuff with that.
Yeah,
And
that's uh-huh.
and then the other trick he'll take the original layer and he'll do two pictures side by side because he's trying to do like you're saying, Robin, to match the original
Yeah, uh-huh.
how he saw it when he took the picture. That's just another little side trick that was pretty cool.
Well, that's a neat way to do some dodging because it does brighten it really subtly. And if you can
And
just
when
keep
you use the
going.
black, you're burning it. So that's how he
Right.
burns and dodges. And then the good thing is now when you get done, let's say you like it, but you went a little bit too far, and you just
Yep.
take the opacity of that blank layer down.
Yep.
So
Very
it gives you a
cool.
lot of, it's a real cool technique.
All right. Thank you. So there you go. There's a way to lighten it up. So now if I turn that off, look at how much darker those shadows are. That's pretty cool. Thank you, Susan. All right. Now we're going to go to another one. This is, where is this? I think this is Waxahachie. And I'm going to use two different techniques, and one of them didn't work, but the other one did, but I want to show you the technique anyway. Let me throw some of these away. Not here. Okay, turn these off and turn this on. Okay, so this is a technique I learned from Umesh Dunda, Piximperfect. I have a love-hate relationship with the guy. I love everything he does, but he's too like he's been drinking too much coffee. But I learn a lot every time I watch his, and I always do. So he's really excited about what he does. So what we have here is this building. Bob? What's that?
Who is that again? The name?
Piximperfect. It's I think it's Umesh Dunda, something like that. But just go look up Piximperfect. Piximperfect. He does all of those. Okay. So this is okay. So I took this, and I think I did this one with color range. I'm not sure. It has quite a bit of halos on it. And there are some ways that you can remove some halos. I kind of wanted to show you some these are destructive ways, but I'm going to show you anyway because it's pretty common. You see this all the time. And I actually showed you the same thing in a different way. So if I click on the mask, I know that all of the area up here that's not selected is black on the mask. Everything that is selected is white on the mask, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my brush. I'm going to change my blend mode to either overlay or soft light. It doesn't really matter which. And if you remember, those modes make gray invisible. Okay. So if I paint with black and I come in here, it's looking for any kind of a gray or black, anything that's toward the black side of gray, and it's going to erase it. So if I come in here and just paint, that's not really doing much. So that, I'm gonna come over here and do it too. Okay, so that should be getting rid of any of the blackish grays. Now, if I turn it around and go with whites, it's going to do the same thing on the other side.
Your opacity is down.
Oh, okay, 30%. It's making a little bit of difference. So I'll go back and do black over again. And you really can't see much difference. So it's not really working too much. So if I came in here, so it's the same thing as if I press Option and click on here. Now you have this. There's not any grays in here. It's all black and it's all white. So if there were any grays, that's what it would do. It would erase those grays. Since there's no grays here, everything is either black or white. Now it means that they are a white shade or a black shade of whatever color they are. So in other words, this blue here is a white shade of blue. So it's saying that that is white, if that makes sense. Now, with this technique, that's probably not going to go away very easily, but I'm going to show it to you because in certain instances, it could work really well. In this case, I probably should have done this on a different image, but we're going to show it anyway. What we're trying to do is, like I said, the color of the background, the original background, and if I turn this off, you can see, is pretty much draped blue. There's not a lot of not a lot of other colors in there. So there's a couple of ways to do this, and I'm going to actually didn't have plans, but I'm going to show you another way to do this too. So what I will do is I'm going to take this. I'm going to do a marquee selection here, and I'm going to do a Command J to copy that selection. Oops. Sorry. Command J. And it copies that little selection. You can see it down here. It's this little blue part. If I turn this off, you've got a little blue box up here. So what I'm going to do is, now you see the blue box. I'm going to turn on my sky, and I'm going to try to match the sky color to that color. So here's my sky. So basically, if I take this, if I can find my cursor, there it is. And I'm going to try to match it to a blue down here, one of these darker blues. So I'm going to try to take the sky and change the color of that blue to match this. So how do I do that? Well, there's a few different ways. You can see all these layers here where I've tried to do that. So I'm going to throw all these away. And we're going to start with curves layer. And in the curves layer, I'm going to select my little selection tool here. And I'm going to come here and I'm going to take it up to try to brighten it and to where it's just about that color. Okay. Then I'm going to come into each one of my color channels and I'm going to push those down a little bit to try to make it that same color. So that's the challenge, is to try to make this color over here. Let's see, and then blue. So bring it up a little bit. Yeah, more like right in there. So then you can also come in here and you try other methods. You can do hue and saturation. And I can come in here and try this. And I want to, let's see, I want to lighten it a little bit. Actually, maybe more like that. Then I want to lighten it. So it's getting pretty close right in there. That looks pretty good to me, right in there. This color is fairly close to this color. So the idea is that when I make the background the same color, then it's going to remove those halos. The problem is that it worked pretty well right here where I had that color. But now up here where you have the white cloud behind it, it didn't work too well. You got all this stuff up here. So it works in some instances. And in this one, I would say it's a failure. But I wanted to show you that technique. And I probably should have done it on something a little similar, simpler, but that's the technique to make that work. Now, the other way to make it work, and this is actually one I wasn't going to show, but I'll go ahead and show it, is I can actually, to make the selection, I can come in here. I'm going to copy this so I can say, sorry, wrong layer. Copy this so that I can turn this off and use it later. And I'm going to take this and I'm going to throw it away. Okay. So I need to turn the group off. There we go. So now I'm back to my original layer. Everybody remember the blend if? Blend if is pretty cool because you can come into a particular channel and select that channel. Now before I do this, I want to make a copy of this because I'm going to need that probably. Oh, and these are on multiply. I don't want them on multiply. If I can find my cursor. There it is. Go back to normal. Change this one back to normal. All I want to do is I'm going to take that sky out. I'm going to turn this back on, and I'm going to come in here to my blue channel, and this layer I'm going to remove the blue. So I'm going to bring it down here. And when you get to, oh, I got this one on too. No wonder nothing was happening. Go to the blue channel. And I'm going to bring it down and notice what happens. Now you've got all these halos here. So if you use the Option or Alt key and split this, you can do this and remove those halos. So now you've got a pretty nice little sky replacement here for a standard blue sky. So you've got no halos over here. You do have some orphan leaves over here, so you might have to come over here and do a little bit of cleanup. But basically, oh, and you've also got the sky bleeding through right here, so you'd have to come in here, and that's what this is for. If I turn this back on and then put a mask on it, press the Alt or Option and click mask, it's going to make it black. Oops, on the wrong one up here. Alt or Option, make it black. So now I can come in here and paint the sky back in by painting white in here to paint this back in. And I'm on overlay, that's why. So you can paint that back in. So it takes a little bit of work to come back here. And if you have another extraction, that you've already done, you can come in here and just use the other extraction, which I could do. But this is one way to also do a pretty quick sky replacement. And I won't spend the time to go over this very carefully, but you get the idea. Paint this back in. You've got your halos gone, much better than the other way, and it looks pretty good. So one last way, run out of time.
Bob?
Here. Yes.
I'm sorry, can I stop you? So what is the difference? What is the difference between blend if, picking blue, and doing a selection of color? Or is it the same?
Well, when you use blend if, it's kind of like your range mask over in Lightroom.
Mm-hmm.
You are saying, in this case, I'm saying for the blue channel that I want to remove, I'm on the wrong layer, that's why.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm wanting to remove the blue from this image. So I'm removing absolutely all the blue from 223 to 255, and then I'm gradating down to 136. So that's why it is gradating and softening as it makes its selection. Now it's not actually making a selection either. It's removing that part of that channel. So if I came in here and I wanted to use this selection for something, there is no selection. So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, so there is no selection. That's part of the difference.
Okay. And it's destructive, I guess.
It's not destructive because I can come back in and I can change it. So it's not destructive.
Okay. Okay.
So it's a pretty cool method if you have a regular blue sky. Now, if you have a white sky, then you can also do it with the gray channel and just remove the white and it brings it out and you can replace it as well. So it works with a gray sky as well. So that's a pretty cool thing. So
Thank you.
sure. So the other thing is we can go back to the original way that we were doing it with multiply, and it works really well. So I'm gonna take these and I'm just gonna throw them away. We're done with that. So I turn this on, I have this and I have it in multiply, and you can see from the building down here that it is bleeding through. So again, what I would do is take this and copy it and then make a smart object out of it and copy this down to it. And I'm going pretty fast now, but it's the same thing we've been doing. Take filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and you can see that I've done it at 741. It's totally gone. I would probably take it down until I am pretty sure that it's still gone, but it's brighter. So it looks pretty good to me there at 141. I mean, I could bring it up a little bit and see if I notice a difference, but in that area, it looks pretty good. So now I have, basically it's gone off of here. So let's look at my tree here, and the halos are pretty much gone here. So it looks pretty good. So what I could do now is come in here and once again, maybe I'll use this, what was his name, Sharon? His method. Guy that we all know, but I can't remember who you said. 30% brush, 30%, and come in here and paint white and do a little bit of dodging to lighten it up. Or you could come in here and just do a levels and lighten it up, because your sky behind is kind of backlighting, as you can see. That was one thing I did want to mention too, which I haven't, doggone it, is you need to make sure that it makes sense. The sky, whenever you come in here to add a sky, you don't want to have the shadows on the left and the sky and the sun on the left. It doesn't make sense. So you want to make sure that whatever you do, it makes sense. In this case, it looks like it's kind of looks like the sky, the sun may be behind it here, and it's backlighting. So it would be a little bit dark in the front. So that looks pretty good as a sky replacement. Again, you have orphan leaves over here. I might want to go over here and just get rid of those so that they don't look so obvious. So any questions on these techniques? Moving right along. This is an easy one here. This was, of course, the Greenville Mill. And what I did was, all I did was come in here and mask the image. I didn't change it to multiply. I just masked it, brought in a sky, and used curves to change it. And in this instance, there are no halos. So it worked out really well to just come in here and take this sky, and the original is this. So it's not a lot different, but you can see more blue in this sky than you did in the other one, and there are no halos. So pretty simple to do. So I'm not really going to go into that. Again, I just did a mask, and I think I did it with the luminosity masking, and came in here and refined it a little bit. I may have done it with quick selection. I'm not sure, because this is a pretty simple mask to do. Okay. Again, it's just knowing that it's not a lot darker than the original. It just has more definition in it and things that you can see. So by it not being a lot darker, it's easier to get rid of those halos. Okay. So here, now this one was a tough one. And I'm gonna show you from scratch. So this will be, I think it's our last, well, we got one more thing to do after this, so maybe this won't take long. Lots of stuff here. So I'm gonna come in here and I'm going to take these, throw them away. And then we're gonna take this, throw it away. And take this and throw it away. Okay, so we have, let me just get rid of all these too. I thought I got rid of those. There we go. Okay, so here's our original. Let me turn this off. And we have our mask. And you can see the mask coming around here. If you look over here to the right, you can't really see, but there's a lot of, let me turn this multiply off. There are some halos over here. If you look over here to this side, you can see, well, you can't really tell until you get this sky. If I turn the sky on, wow, look at all the stuff here. Look at all the stuff. So lots of halo stuff, and especially over here.
It's
really,
a nice storm.
Yeah, really, that's what it looks like. This was shot, where was this shot? I can't remember.
Wasn't a nice storm.
No, it was in the summer, believe me. But it was, some people were living here, and I thought this was a pretty cool house with a pink trim. And I was going to shoot it, and I thought, I better not get up too close. So I shot it anyway, and it's not really that good of a picture, but it's pretty good at showing how we can remove these halos. So let's go through the process. I'm going to take this and I'm going to change it to multiply. You could use darken too. Sometimes darken actually works better. I'm gonna leave it at multiply just because that's what we've been doing. If multiply doesn't work, try darken, because I've done that a couple of times and it actually does work better. So I have it here, and now let's look. Okay, well, I need to go in and get rid of all this extra stuff here. So let's do the standard thing, Command J. I'm going to turn it into a smart object. If I can find it, convert to smart object, there we go. And I probably don't even need to do that for these demos because I'm not going to change it. But typically, I mean, it's a good idea to make it a smart object because you may look at it and go, yeah, I need to change that. It's not quite right. So you need to always decouple this. I haven't been doing that, and that makes a big difference. Decoupling means that when I blur this, it's not going to mess up the mask. So that could be some of the issues that we've been having. I'm supposed to decouple that so that they're not linked together. So you want to, if you're making notes on that, you need to be sure that that's one of the things you do. And I apologize for that because it's probably influenced some of our images. So now I'm going to take this and I'm going to go to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and it's at 161, and I still see some influence here, especially right here. You can see that big blue streak coming across. So I'm going to push that up some more and keep pushing it up some more, maybe a little more. That looks pretty good right there. It didn't change much when I did that. So now we have this. And let's look. We still have a lot of fringing there. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this and I'm going to copy it again. It gets really darker, but look, we're getting fringing is beginning to go away. Let's do it again. Command J, and it's pretty much gone. You can still see some of it right there. I'm zoomed in at 105%. You could actually go one more time, but I'm going to stop here. You see a little more fringing there. It is totally gone over here. So your fringing is gone, but you have a really dark image. So what you can do is the things that we have done is come in here and you can do a brightness, or you can do a levels or a curves or exposure, whatever you like to do. And you can come in here and bring that up. I can bring the midtones up some, bring the whites up a little bit more. And what you have here, you still don't have your fringing because you matched. You have a little bit there that you could do probably another go at it, but it might be a little tough to get the image to look right. But for the most part, your fringing is gone and you've got your sky replacement. So again, maybe you do the little trick with soft light and lighten it up, I came in here with a curves layer and did this and went into the shadows here and tried to brighten up those shadows. Whoops, way too much. Brighten up those shadows a little bit and then work some other areas. And when you do that, you notice you have some blue over here, but you're losing your blue up here. So it's kind of a trade-off. You have to decide what you really want. So here's an image that I replaced the sky on, and the halos are pretty much gone. Like I said, you've still got some over here. I can press the right key. You zoom in, you can still see some over here. This is 110%. And up here, you've got some purple up here too that you would have to deal with. And I would probably go into camera raw and use the defringe over there to get rid of that. Whoops. But over here, there's nothing. A little bit of purple again, but there's no fringing. So you've replaced the sky, and by doing this multiply and then bringing it back with your curves and your levels, you've brought it back to a usable image. And then again, with the, like Sharon had indicated, you come in here and do some dodging and get rid of some of this area. I also came in and did a vibrance to it, but it's kind of vibrant right now. So if I lighten it up anymore, I would probably have to add some vibrance. You may want to change these to luminosity too, so that it's only affecting the brightness of the image and not the color. So there, that's a little bit better. It's not so vibrant now with the colors. It's just lighter. So does that make sense? Everybody good? Are we following me?
Yep.
Silence
Okay.
is simplicity.
Somewhat.
Silence
figure
is
out-
simplicity.
After the 5th or 6th time, maybe it begins to make sense.
Repetition helps.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I did want to go through one more thing here just to kind of show you. There are some plugins that you can use. One of them is Luminar. I'm going to take this and throw it away, and we're going to do it from scratch. This is an image I shot last year, a couple years ago, whatever. And if we replace the sky on here, we're going to go into Luminar. Now, if you don't have Luminar, that's okay. I just wanted to kind of show you. I know, Ron, that you have it. I'm not sure anybody else has it, but it's an option for replacing skies. And I'm going to tell you the things I like and the things I don't like. The thing that I really do like is that it actually does an awesome job of replacing the sky. Now, if you're in Luminar and you click on your little creative tab here, it brings up, you can go to the sky replacement. The thing I don't like is that I have no idea what the sky looks like that I'm selecting. That's one of the things I don't like. So I just have to kind of select it and see what happens. Okay, here's the sky. Now, with this, you can see that the sun is setting in the south, and we have the sky coming from this side. So this image wouldn't work. But look at the awesome job it did. I want you to, look at this and see how it's selected. There are no halos whatsoever. Selected around here. It didn't get the skyline here, but I probably would want to remove this anyway. So that works out okay. Now, this looks kind of funny, but it's just the way the sky is around it, I think. But it does an awesome job of coming in here. Now, this looks like it missed it, but I believe it's just the sky behind it. So you do have some options here making changes. You can change the horizontal position up or down, relight the scene. You have some other things here where you can, flip the sky. If you want it to go the other way, I can flip it and it'll come from the other direction, which makes a little bit more sense. But it's still setting in the south. Excuse me. And then you have some other options, change the temperature and exposure and so on. Another thing I don't like about this is that you're done when you get out of here. There's no mask. There's no changing the sky. There's no, if I wanted to crunch the sky up or make it bigger or whatever, there is no option. The only thing you could do is come in here and select your own sky. which you can do. You can go in and select, and it would go over here, and I could select my skies. I've got all these, I got 1,000 skies or something like that in here, and I can select a sky and put it in there. But then I don't know what it's going to look like until I see it, until I'm done. But I don't, you know, I like to take my sky and squish it up a little bit. This is kind of a neat sky, although the sun, I think, might be coming from that side. Looks kind of cool. But the thing I do like is it's so quick and so easy to do. So if you get a sky that you like and and it works, I mean, you know, you can't get any better than this. So I just say apply, and it goes back to Photoshop. Now you could do some processing in here. Don't get me wrong. There's a ton of stuff. You can do just about everything you can do in Photoshop. You can do it in here. It goes back to Photoshop, and then you can finish it over there if you want to, if you're more familiar with that kind of stuff. So it brings it back over here, and you have, you know, the filter down here below, and it brings in the sky. So that's one method. Any questions about that? Luminar is about to change their focus, I think, or not, maybe not focus isn't the right word. They're about to change the way they do things, and they're going strictly to artificial intelligence. That's what I heard anyway. And they're offering a new great discount for their pre-sale, what they call it, pre-sale, I guess, pre-orders for their new version that's going to come out. And the first 30,000 that sign up can get it for $59.99 or something like that. So I haven't signed up or anything because I rarely use it, but when I use it, I'm always happy I did. So it's a great plug-in. I'm so used to doing things in Photoshop, I don't usually jump out there. The other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to take it, I'm going to actually, let's see if I can copy this and then throw this away, bring this up here. There we go. I'm going to throw this away. One I did before. Oh, there's two of them. Okay. There we go. So I'm going to turn this off. Now I'm going to go into another plugin, which is a program that I use a lot of. I don't use this particular part of it, but this is Topaz Mask AI. And it's the latest version. And I think it's like $79 or something just for mask. So it's a little bit more expensive than what you're doing with Luminar, and you get a lot more for your money with Luminar, basically. But it has a new thing here, and it's called Sky. So if I click this, it tries to determine what the sky is. Now, the way this works is green is keep, red is throw away, and blue is, I don't know, I want you to tell me. So it means I want you to calculate for me. So there's some areas here where we know that we definitely want to keep the tower. But it's got some red spots in here for areas. Some of it's good, but some of it's on these tie lines, and we don't want it to be there. So what I'm going to do is, it also doesn't select the wires here. So I'm going to bring this down. I'm going to select those wires just for grins. And then I'm going to come in here, and I'm going to actually paint blue on these because I don't want to take the chance that it's going to say I don't want those wires when I do. So now we've got a mask in here that says I want to make sure I keep the tree, I want to make sure I keep the tower, I want to make sure I keep this building over here, but I want you to tell me based on the contrast of the edges about the rest. So I'm going to click on Compute Mask, and it's going to come in here and try to process a mask. It's usually a little faster. Here we go. All right, so it's selected, and it selected pretty well. It missed this area up here. It did not get the lines, but neither did Luminar, but it got everything else pretty well. Got the tree and got everything else, and it was pretty quick. So the thing I want to do is I want to come back up here, and I'm going to change it and tell it to look at contrast rather than artificial intelligence. And I'm going to paint over that again, and I'm going to see if it will get it correctly. Oh, what the heck? It didn't do that. It suddenly, because I did that, it messed up that. That's weird. It didn't do that a while ago, but anyway, we're going to come back in here, and I'm going to paint it again. Maybe I'll do artificial intelligence again. Oops, reprocessing. Yeah, that's not what I want. So this actually worked really well earlier. Now it's having a heart attack. Recalculate. Okay, there we go. It still messed that up there. So I'm going to just paint over that again with artificial intelligence and see if it'll fix it. It did earlier. Now, I like this. It's actually not cooperating right now, and it's not very good advertisement for them, but I like this. It still didn't work. It's still blue behind there. But the reason I like this is because I can say apply, and is it working? Yeah. And I can bring it back in here, and I have this mask, and I can turn on my sky, and I have a mask. So I can do whatever I need to do with this mask. I can take the sky and crunch it. I can move it around. I can paint other things out or in. The thing is it doesn't do as good a job at this point as you get with Luminar. It missed some areas here. It missed a little bit here, missed a little bit here. And that is okay, but it did miss some here and here. So it's a toss-up. What would I do? I would probably, and that looks kind of funny, but I think that's the sky. I would probably use a luminosity mask and do it myself. Unless I'm in a crunch, unless I know the sky I want to use, I can use Luminar with it. So if I know the sky and I want it crunched, I have it exactly positioned the way I want, I can select it in Luminar and it works great. So that may be an option as well. So I'm running over here. Sorry about that. Any questions, comments, suggestions? Is anybody there? Yeah.
Yes. A quick question. So I was trying to look at that Luminar AI, and they have that promotional. It was $69.
Okay.
But does the Luminar, do you know if the Luminar AI has everything that your Luminar has in it?
I think that's the plan. Yeah. It's just going to approach it differently. It's going to use a lot more AI than it is anything else. That's my understanding. Now, I haven't really researched it, but that's what I've read about it.
Well, two different instructors during the week used that. And so I looked at it, but after you did your sky, that looks like it's pretty cool.
It is pretty cool. And like I said, every time I use it, I really like it. It's got some other things in there. If I open it up, it's got some other AI things in there that I like a lot. Plus the presets at the bottom, it's got lookup tables, it's got all kinds of stuff in there. But one of the things I like is this AI enhance, where you can add some, you can pull it up here and it uses AI to determine how to better light your image. And that sky enhancer that you can pull it up, it tries to enhance your sky. But I really like this AI accent here. It does a really good job. And then if you want to add structure, you got the same thing here. You can add some really cool texture to it. So those are just some things. And there's lots of stuff here. I haven't used any of the portrait stuff. I kind of like to use my own stuff, especially skin enhancer and stuff like that. Maybe the high key would be cool. I don't know. I have used the Orton effect though, and I really like it. There's two Orton effects, type 1 and type 2, and they have different kinds of looks, but I think they're really cool. So, and then you have these here where you've got advanced contrast, and that kind of reminds me of the Nick contrast stuff. So it's pretty cool. I think it's worth the $69 or $79 or whatever. I'm just not kind of guy that goes out and buys pre-orders unless I know absolutely that I need it. So that's just me. But it's
So
pretty
when you
cool.
use the topaz mask, does that do a very good job if you were like doing the trees at the mill?
I like it. It's not a lot different. See, I use typically when I do extractions, I'm almost always doing people. And when I do people, I like to use just regular select and mask in Photoshop. The AI, the mask AI for Topaz, I think is getting better and better. And I like the idea that you can just click one click and get the sky. I think it has a little bit more work to do. When I went to practice on it today for this, I found out I was 2 versions behind, so I had to actually update. It didn't have the sky enhancer, but I knew that it was there. And it also has a people enhancer there, so it's kind of trying to come up with the same kind of thing I think that Photoshop has, where you select subject, where it looks for either a sky or it looks for people. And I think it's going to get better, but I think it's still not quite there, especially when you compare it to Luminar. Luminar is just amazing.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I used to be a Topaz fanboy, but I guess about 2 years ago, Photoshop in my mind is just as easy now.
Yeah, there's still,
For most things.
I like the sharpen, the AI sharpen and the denoise. I think the denoise is exceptional. And I'm really, really liking the sharpen now too. So those 2 tools I use constantly. The other tools, I like the adjust tool because I can add grit, with the adjust tool. What else do I like? Let me see. Oh, and of course there's
Noise.
There's yeah, the denoise. That's what I'm saying. That was one of the ones I really like. But there's also, if you look here, let's see, clarity is great, and detail is really good too. Detail is kind of like sharpen. So I mean, and clarity, they kind of all do the same thing. But I finally bent down and got Topaz Studio. I actually got it for a double discount, so it was kind of a no-brainer for me. And in Studio, you have impression and you have detail and you have all of those things in Studio, which is the way they're going now. So if I came in here and I go filters and I go plugins, it's got your AI adjust, your denoise and sharpen and mask AI, but you also have your creative in here, and your creative and your stylistic is where you can go in and find your impression. And I know, Ron, you use the impression. I use it all the time. Yeah, I use it all the time with, here we go, impression right here. I use it all the time as the filter that it was. In here, it doesn't include everything that it includes in the standalone plugin. So I'm still using the other one, because if you look here and you go to, see, I can't even find my way around. Let's see. Where is it where you go to all the stuff? Anyway, in here somewhere, you go to all the presets.
I don't see it. So.
Yeah, I don't see it either, and I've already
She's at the top.
been there.
Presets at the bottom. Was that it down there?
Oh wow,
Presets.
they moved that then. Okay.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you can come in here but it doesn't have all the presets I'm used to. So all of that, Degas and Da Vinci and all those things.
Yeah.
I guess you could probably search for it here and find it, but it's just got these few. So, but it's here, and I think this is the way they're going to put everything in their studio so that you can use it in here, and rather than having all these independent filters.
Yeah. Well, they kind of aggravated me with that, with their change of licensing, right? Because they'd always sold the other one as a perpetual free upgrades.
Yep.
Was the way it was sold originally. So I paid, I don't remember, $300 or $400 for it.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, well, that.
Ron, they did that to me because Christy and I had gone together and bought it because you could have it on 2 computers when we bought it years ago. And so when I called in and I talked to them on the phone, call them and talk to them. They will upgrade all of your stuff and give you the studio with your features in it. And then I only had to pay $50 to where I got everything.
Oh, I'll do
So-
that. I'll try that. Yeah.
Their customer service was phenomenal. They were really, really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I need to. My nephew actually used to work there, and I gave him shit about it for about a year.
Well,
Well,
the
you
other
know-
thing, the class
Go
that
ahead.
I took was for doing the competition prints.
Yep.
He's a I don't remember his name. It was one of
Mark.
the pre-con classes.
Yep.
Did you
Mark
take it?
McCall. Yeah, I took it.
That was weird how he runs it through Topaz Detail. I didn't like it. Did you?
Yeah. I don't use the detail. I used to, but I'm using other things now that it does the same thing. I mean, detail is pretty cool because you can go in there. It's kind of like adjust. You can go in there and do a micro adjustment, a middle, and you can do the large adjustment, the normal and the micro, and you can set them to adjust the sharpness or the clarity. I guess it's really not clarity because it doesn't adjust the contrast, but it does adjust the edges, the sharpness. So you have a lot more detail. So I don't really use that for the way I work, but I can see where it could be real cool. I used to use the detail a lot. I wanted to say though that I'm still miffed that you could get Nick for free whenever I paid like hundreds of dollars for it.
Yeah.
And I got in contact with DxO and they go, sorry, if you want to upgrade, you got to buy it new. So I don't use Nick much anymore anyway. I love it, but I just don't use it much. All right, we're way past time. Any more questions?
No.
Appreciate it, Bob.
Thanks, Bob.
You bet.
Thanks.
You
Bye,
bet.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
We will see you next time.
All right.
Thanks, Bob.
You bet.